Don Schmidt, Book Kahuna, coming at you with today's publishing tip for the day. Today's publishing tip: partner with experts. Get them to come on interviews, Google Hangouts, talk to them, get their insights. Had a great Google Hangout with Ali Machate just now. Just pulled the video off of YouTube, and I'm going to be putting it back up there. Just a short intro to say thank you to Ali. And here is my interview with Ali Machate, straight from Google Hangouts. Enjoy. Don Schmidt, the Book Kahuna, signing off. Till next time. Bye-bye. One. Hello, all. This is Don Schmidt, the Book Kahuna, and we're coming to you live today, and I have my special guest, Ali Machate, and just wanted to give you a little background. Ali and I met on LinkedIn, and you network with people, you get to know other professionals in your field, and you come to find out that getting together is mutually beneficial and can help a lot of people out there in the field. So we decided it was time to get together and do this Google Hangout and just get some information out to anybody who's interested in self-publishing, ghostwriting, any kind of editorial information from manuscript to bound book. So with that in mind, I'm going to throw it over to Ali to give us a little background on how she got into this wonderful publishing industry.
Oh gosh, well, I've been working in the publishing industry in one way or another for 15 years now, which is crazy to say. It doesn't seem like that long, but I cut my teeth as an editorial intern with a very tiny publishing house in upstate New York that sadly no longer exists, and then was fortunate enough to land a position with Simon & Schuster in New York City. And I worked there originally with two senior editors, one of whom eventually left the company, and I stayed with the other. And I worked there for many years and eventually built up my own list and acquired my own titles, in addition to working with some of the more senior people, helping, my boss, for example, to acquire and publish the books on her list. So I got a really thorough education in Big Five traditional publishing. And after a while, the business started to change. It was sort of similar to what's happened in the last few years more recently, that the economy took a downturn and the publishing companies started shifting around. And I felt like it was time for me to go back to school and finish up my master's degree. And then I started freelancing, and I always intended to go back, but the freelancing went so well and I enjoyed it so much that I kept doing it. So I've been a full-time freelancer now for 10 years.
That's great. That's great. That's some really great experience too with the Simon & Schuster and
absolutely.
Well, what kind of work do you do for your clients? Where do you start?
Yeah, I have a pretty wide range. So me personally, I focus on ghostwriting nonfiction. In fact, I'm really excited because my latest project, The Way of the Seal, is actually a national bestseller. Yay!
Hey, congratulations!
Thank you very much. It's very exciting, and it's holding on strong, so it's really cool. So I do ghostwriting and sort of what we call book doctoring, which is a sort of very intensive, high-level editorial service. And then more in line with what I used to do at Simon & Schuster and what most people are familiar with is developmental editing. And I do that with a small team. I actually run a small team of professionals, and we all do everything from helping writers to improve their manuscripts, look at the big picture. If it's nonfiction, look at structure and organization and how well the book is achieving its promise to the reader. If it's fiction or memoir, it might be looking at how well the themes are coming across, or plot and story development, or how authentic the characters feel to the reader. And we also have a couple of copy editors and proofreaders on the team. They're the type of editors who look at the more technical aspects, so correcting things like grammar and punctuation, and basic fundamental issues of clarity. So we kind of run the gamut. If it has to do with content, we can help.
And as we all know, content is king, so
Indeed.
making sure that it's set up the way that it should be in a readable format is what it's all about these days.
It is. It's crucial. But, you know, of course, and the reason we're talking here today is the second part of that is once you have that content perfected is how you get it to your readers. And that's sort of where my background, I think, is a strong suit. I'm able to educate writers, and I do you know, writers conferences and one-on-one consultations and things like that about how to go about getting a book contract if that's what they want, to get an agent to work with a publisher. But because in the last several years self-publishing has become such a viable alternative, I've also started educating writers on how to do what I call successful self-publishing, because I make a firm distinction between simply making a book available for sale and really wearing that hat of the publisher.
Well, which brings me to my next question, which is, since you come from the Big Five traditional publishing background, how does that influence how you deal with independent publishers and self-publishers on a day-to-day basis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, the first thing is that I was able to see the growth of self-publishing into what it is now from an interesting vantage point. You know, I remember in the first couple of years of the millennium, even when print on demand was first becoming known as a printing possibility, there were authors who were self-publishing books into very specific niche markets.
Right.
And then there were also people who were publishing into commercial markets, but they, you know, perhaps didn't have any connections, or they didn't have any kind of writing credentials, and maybe the writing itself wasn't even that polished, but they were able to show by self-publishing their book that there was in fact an audience for their type of fiction. In fact, at the time they called it ghetto fiction because there were all of these people who had been previously incarcerated or who were still incarcerated, who were writing novels, fictionalized versions of their sort of criminal or gangster lifestyle. And these books were being self-published by friends and family on the outside who were selling them on tables in parts of New York City and were selling thousands of copies. So they were able to show that there was an audience for this type of fiction, and then the big publishers started taking notice. So I was able to see the growth from there all the way into what it is now, and I think that it affects the way I work with self-publishing authors because I'm able to communicate to them some of the elements of a traditional publishing model that they can take advantage of, either directly or in a slightly different way, and also some things that the big publishers do that are simply not useful for self-publishers. They can't use the same kind of relationships or contacts, or it just isn't effective for some reason. Right.
And to go back for a minute, we're not actually promoting like incarceration as a way to become a successful self-published author.
No, certainly not. Certainly.
And now, so who does well in self-publishing versus traditional or legacy publishing? Who are the authors who really like step to the forefront in that type of an environment?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the models are different enough that the kinds of authors who do well with each are really kind of different. So, for example, the gentleman that I partnered with to write The Way of the Seal, he had a large mailing list. He had a very well-established business. He wasn't necessarily nationally known. You know, he wasn't on this big national circuit in terms of traveling around to speak, but he did travel. He did do workshops in different parts of the country. And he had a really active online presence. He had autoresponder courses and webinars and a very active Facebook page and various things going on. So what we call an author platform. So because he had a very well-established platform, he was more suited to traditional publishing because a publisher could then take what he had already done and sort of take him to the next level. They could partner with him and share their relationships and leverage their relationships in a way that he might not have been able to as a self-publisher. That said, he has self-published some books, and he certainly was able to do well on his own also. But for example, his latest book, The Way of the Seal, is now being sold through Barnes & Noble, and they're pushing it in various promotions and having it on special displays. That wouldn't have happened with a self-published book.
Okay.
So
did he do it as an ebook and as a print book at the same time, or?
Yes,
Great.
print and digital are both available. So somebody like that, somebody who already has an established platform, but who maybe isn't yet fully expanded throughout the country, where there's still room to grow, that can be a really ideal position to work with a traditional publisher. And of course, if you do have a very large national platform, but for some crazy reason you don't have a book yet, those people also do really well with traditional publishers. But for self-publishing, I think that there's an additional opportunity. If you are somebody who's targeting, let's say, a very specific niche market, you might be able to do very well selling several thousand copies, even tens of thousands of copies, but yet your market might be too small for a big publisher to be interested in.
Right.
Or if you're writing fiction or memoir and let's say you're very talented, but you have absolutely no connections, you have no platform to speak of, you've never published any short stories, it's basically a blank slate. Sometimes publishers can be hesitant to work with new authors in that position because they feel like they don't have enough to leverage to market the book. So you can do like the authors that we mentioned earlier and show publishers, if that's something you're interested in doing down the road, that you can find an audience, that your work does stand strongly enough on its own to attract readers, and that the work speaks for itself.
Do you feel like there's a growing acceptance for self-publishing and independent publishers, or is there still a stigma attached in the publishing field itself? How do you view it from your vantage point?
I think both are happening, actually. There's definitely growing acceptance. I think more and more people are realizing that self-publishing is a choice, and it's not always a reactive choice. The stigma, of course, is that, oh, well, you're not really published if you do it yourself, or somehow that the only reason you're doing it is because you couldn't get published by a real publisher. I think more people are aware of the fact that that's not true anymore. There's been a lot of press about some very successful self-publishers, and some of these people have done a lot of wonderful work to sort of change public opinion and make it clear that you can be successful as a self-publisher. There's lots of reasons why you might choose self-publishing, and none of them have to do necessarily with, a sort of reaction to rejection. But that said, I think that there is still a stigma, and really, honestly, for a good reason. There are still a large number of books that are being self-published that really aren't up to snuff. They're not well written enough. And the product is not professional enough, and the number of these books is still overwhelmingly large with respect to the smaller number of books that I think people have put a lot amount of time and energy and sometimes even money into perfecting. So I think it's shifting, but I think that it wouldn't be correct to say that it's gone.
And people who self-publish sometimes feel that they can cut out some of the steps along the way in the manuscript, like the copy editing or the developmental editing, and as we said in the beginning, the content is really what is the king of your product. And if you don't have good content and it gets out there, it's not gonna do well, because it's a discerning audience, and they all have different ways to spend their disposable dollars, and you're out there making sure that people are putting together books that are worth the money that people want to pay for them. So, which is admirable.
Well, we always say that it's our mission to help bring more high quality books to readers everywhere, including us, because we all love to read. I grew up with my nose in a book, just like a lot of editors and a lot of content professionals. I love fiction. I love memoir. I read very widely. When I have a problem, I turn to books, for solutions. So, I want there to be better books out there for a little bit of a selfish reason. But yeah, definitely, I want everybody to have more access to better books. It's one of the things about self-publishing that's really exciting is that there are people out there who have something wonderful to offer, but for one reason or another might not seem like an attractive investment for a big publisher. So self-publishing enables them to get their work out to the general public anyway.
And that comes to the next question of why someone would choose a traditional publisher when there's so many different opportunities out there for self-publishing. Maybe social media, or what do you see? Why would you choose one over the other, especially a self-publisher?
Yeah. Well, when I talk to clients about their publishing choices, and a lot of people that come to me these days are very unsure. It used to be, I've seen a significant shift. It used to be that people would contact me and they wanted to get an agent, they wanted to get a publisher, and I helped them, guide them in that direction. Now, a lot more people are unsure. They're like, well, I could do that, or they've already been trying with some, not really a lot of success, and they don't know if self-publishing is right for them. I think it's a very personal choice. Part of it has to do with simply being honest about what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. I like to say that you're going to pay for something one way or another. So when it comes to self-publishing, you're going to spend a lot of time. You're probably going to spend money. If you don't spend money, you're going to spend a lot more time, a lot more energy, to make up for those things that you might otherwise contract out to someone. If you think that you can just put together a book, even a really great book, even a beautiful cover and well-told story and well-edited, if you think you're going to just upload it to the Kindle store or to Amazon and not have to do anything and it's just going to become a bestseller, you're completely delusional. It's just not how it works for anybody.
Right.
So people who understand and can look at publishing their book like a business, people who can be a little entrepreneurial, I think there's an entrepreneurial spirit to self-publishing, they might choose self-publishing. The people who might choose traditional publishing are aware that they either are incapable of or simply don't want to put that same effort into producing their book. They want to save their energy for the promotion, because of course you still have to be involved in selling your book no matter what route you go.
Right.
But if you go with a traditional publisher, they're going to handle the editing, the design, the distribution. They're going to guide the promotion. They want you to participate, but they're going to sort of usher the whole business. And also people who recognize that, like I mentioned earlier, that they're already at a certain level in terms of their ability to reach their audience. They have a certain level of exposure through their platform. They recognize that traditional publishers can bring something valuable to the table and can take them where they want to go with a lot less effort on their part and, let's say, less time spent acquiring education about a whole new industry that you might not really. I think all authors should know the publishing industry a little, but there's certainly a difference between what you have to know as a self-publisher versus what you have to know when you have an established publisher behind you.
And that's a very good point, because I've had a few people who work in publishing a lot of times are like lawyers. People always come up to us and ask questions about, well, how do I do this? How do I do that? And the one in particular came up to me and said, I want a book, but I don't want to know anything about the publishing industry. I just want a book, okay? And we worked it out, but a lot of people, that's how they want to see it. They don't want to know about the industry. They just want to get their book done.
Right.
So in that vein, do you see print books overtaking and killing off, being killed off by the ebooks? Do you think that's actually what's happening out there, or do you see it more as like one is marketing the other, and you need pretty much both of them to help out with your marketing and sales, or how do you view things?
Mm-hmm. Well, ebooks is sort of an interesting situation, right? Because it's the ability to publish a book so quickly and with such a low cost threshold, that ebooks and the evolution of the e-readers, really, because there's been ebooks for quite a long time. I think a lot of people don't know that. There have been ebooks in a couple of different forms, excuse me. Even as long as I've been in publishing, there were ebooks way back. It's just that there were no portable readers, and nobody wanted to sit on their desktop and read a 300-page PDF book.
Right.
So it's really the e-reader that changed everything, but because it now, you can have, let's say, a Kindle file, for example, uploaded to the store and available for sale in like 24 hours. And if you do everything yourself, there's no cost. So in that sense, I think ebooks have completely changed the game, and especially when it comes to self-publishing, that's what has enabled, I think it's enabled the stigma a little bit, because the ease with which you can now make a book available to the public often encourages people to overlook some really crucial components to a successful self-publishing plan. Like we mentioned, they haven't taken the time to really learn their craft. They haven't taken the time to explore how viable their particular book is as an offering to a specific market. There's lots of things that sort of fall by the wayside when you're able to practically click a button and have a book available for sale. As far as whether or not it's taken over from print or how it's affected print, I think a lot of people would be surprised to find out that there are lots of studies done all the time, but a recent study done by a group called Pew Research actually showed that last year the percentage of American readers who only read ebooks was only 4%. So there's really still a large number of people who are reading print, and even if they're reading ebooks, they're still also reading print. So anybody who thinks print is dead is really mistaken. There's going to be a long time to go yet before print is truly completely dead. Ebooks are definitely growing. More and more people are reading them. More and more people have tablets and smartphones and e-readers, but they have not overtaken the marketplace as far as print is concerned yet.
And going hand in hand with that, I'm sure, I haven't seen any studies on this, but I'm sure that there's been an upsurge of people actually visiting the public library, because then you don't have to buy anything. You just get a print book, or even now you can get a download from an ebook for 2 weeks, and you have it and you can read it. So I'm sure readership because of that is increasing as well. So both ways, you're always going to get a lot of more people reading one or the other, and I'm sure the libraries don't want to see print go away.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's an interesting point. I haven't seen any studies that talk about whether or not library use has increased. That would be really interesting to know. But ebooks do pose a unique problem for libraries, and it's possible. I don't know if you saw it. I know it was getting some decent publicity, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years ago, that the libraries are really fighting with the big publishers about rights to ebooks.
Yes.
So the way it works with a print book, right, is the library gets a license, and they essentially have a limited life for each book, because at some point the book's been handled so much it just starts to get gross and it falls apart, and they don't have the book anymore.
Right.
But with an ebook, that never happens. So there's been a lot of debate and a lot of legal wrangling going on about just how many times libraries should be allowed to lend out an ebook before they have to pay for a new license, the way that they sort of would if they had to replace a new print book. And I don't know the current status, honestly, but I know at one point, I think it was Random House. I'm not 100% sure, but one of the major publishers basically had made it so difficult for libraries to even lend their ebooks that they didn't carry them at all. So a lot of people who really love reading ebooks, like myself included, and I read both, I never get ebooks from my local library because inevitably I find that they don't have the availability of the titles I want.
And you just hit on a point that's exactly true. I actually went to my local library and wanted to get an ebook just to try it for the first time on my
Oh,
iPad.
yeah.
I had never gotten an ebook for to borrow, and I just wanted to see how the process worked. But it took so long to get it that I finally just went online and bought the ebook instead.
Right.
And that so anyway, I know we're running a little bit short on time today, and I know we're going to break this up into a two-part session. But I just wanted to ask you. Is there anything, first, what's coming up for you, and how could the people, that we've got as an audience right now get in touch with you to help out with a project, or, what information do you want to give out to our independent and self-publishers that are on the line right now?
Great. Well, I actually have a lot of exciting things coming up for 2014, and it's very fortuitous that you and I are doing this as my first Google Hangout, because starting in April, I'm going to start doing some possibly on Google, but definitely on some online platform. I'm launching a new program I'm calling Book Lunch. So once a month, we're going to get together and basically do a video chat, and I'm going to invite people to send me questions, anything that has to do with publishing and books beforehand or during the course of the session. And I'm just going to sit here with a cup of coffee or a sandwich, and I'm going to talk to people and answer whatever questions I possibly can. I definitely intend to have some guests. I hope that you'll join me one time at least. And
oh, you know it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to start doing that. Is just a continuing effort to try and help people, try and educate people, and get them on the right track. And then I'm going to have a series of very targeted webinars that are going to be a little bit more educational and focused on a series of topics, including self-publishing topics. So if people are interested in those, I actually don't have an opt-in page set up just yet because it's still very, very new. But if you're interested and you're listening to this, feel free to send an email to support@alimachate.com and just put, book lunch or webinars in the subject, and we'll hold on to your email address and we'll send you a notice when everything's set up. And if you have a manuscript and you need some help, or if you have a book proposal and you need some help, whether it's just getting a little bit of feedback or getting a full developmental edit, we have a range of services at different price points, so we have something for everyone. And you can just visit one of my websites. I have ambitiousenterprises.com. is for people who have a complete manuscript or book proposal.
Okay.
And alimachate.com is that higher level for people who need help writing the book in the first place.
That's great, Ali. And they can also look for you on LinkedIn like I did, and
yeah,
get to know you there as well.
Yeah, I've got I have Facebook pages for both entities, Twitter. I'm kind of everywhere, so yeah.
Well, I know you have to run, so we will end our first section here. But I want to thank you for taking the time, and we'll continue next time, Ali. And hope everything goes well for the weekend, and we'll have another hangout in the near future.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Don. I appreciate it.
Okay. So this is Don Schmidt, the Book Kahuna, and we just had a nice hangout with Ali Machate. And it will be available on YouTube, and she'll have it on her websites, and we will have another one coming up in the near future. And this is my first Google Hangout, so I hope I did a fairly good job on this. Thank you all. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.